Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going straight into a really fundamental shift we're all living through.
Right.
How technology is changing the very nature of how we create, share, and, well, trust knowledge.
It's huge, and it's not just about getting information faster, is it? It's really transforming perspectives.
Exactly. A transformation in how we see the world.
And for this deep dive, we've pulled together some really interesting material. We're looking at academic studies, yes, but also real-world cases.
From science, media, policy.
Even just everyday life stuff.
Yeah. And our goal today, for you listening, is to kind of pull out the key insights from all this, give you a clearer map, maybe, of this digital knowledge landscape.
Because it can feel overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Information overload is real.
Definitely. So think of this as a shortcut through the noise to what really matters. Okay, so where should we start? Maybe with how knowledge communities themselves have changed.
Good starting point, comparing the old guard, the traditional structures, with these newer online spaces we all use. It's fascinating, actually, looking at the similarities, but also the big differences. Think about a really established group like the Royal Society.
Right, centuries old.
Exactly. Historically, membership was often, a long-term thing, fostering these deep, sustained conversations among verified experts.
And now compare that to, say, an online community.
Like the subreddit AskHistorians, maybe. You've got this constantly shifting mix of people.
Some academics, some just enthusiasts.
Right. Some anonymous, some not. And they're interacting with this huge audience. Very different feel.
And it's not just who's there, it's how you signal credibility, isn't it?
Totally. In the traditional world, you've got your PhD, your published papers, your university job.
Clear signals.
Relatively clear, yeah. But online, maybe on Stack Overflow, it's more about your reputation score.
Which our sources point out can sometimes be, well, gamed a bit by answering easier questions that get lots of upvotes.
It can be, yeah. So the question becomes, are these online signals inherently less reliable or just different with their own flaws?
A really important distinction. And what about gatekeeping? How information gets validated?
Well, traditionally, you had peer review as the big filter in journals.
The gold standard, supposedly.
Right. But look at something massive and collaborative like WikiData. Anyone can jump in and add info.
So how does quality control work there?
It's more organic, relies a lot on automated checks, bots, and then volunteer editors spotting errors or, vandalism.
And then there's geography. That's a huge one.
Oh, absolutely. Think about a place like the Bodleian Library at Oxford. Amazing resource, but traditionally...
You had to physically be there.
Exactly. Contrast that with Zooniverse, the citizen science platform. Millions of volunteers anywhere in the world.
Classifying galaxies from their laptops.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you have these two models, traditional, online, both wrestling with trust and quality, but in such different ways.
What seems clear is we're trading maybe stability and local identity for dynamism and global reach.
But that trade-off creates tension. How do you verify expertise? How do you ensure quality when things are so decentralized and fast-moving?
Which kind of leads us neatly into the next big question, echo chambers.
Right. Are these online spaces just reinforcing what we already think? How much are social networks siloing us?
It's something I think a lot of us worry about, or at least wonder about. Is my feed just showing me stuff I already agree with?
Well, there was a big MIT study in 2023, looked at almost 5 million Twitter users.
Wow.
And they found political retweets were, get this, 15 times more likely to come from someone with the same political leaning.
15 times? That's significant. Really shows how clustered these networks can get, ideologically speaking.
And the study did something else interesting. They actually showed users content from the other side.
And how did people react?
About 4% just muted or blocked the source, didn't engage, just shut it down.
Suggests a real resistance, in some cases, to even seeing different views.
It does. Then you have another case study from 2021 on the COVID vaccine debate on Facebook.
I remember hearing about this. The disinformation dozen.
That's the one. Found that something like 65% of the anti-vaccine content came from just 12 people.
Only 12. That's incredible concentration.
And crucially, their posts spread mostly within these really tight-knit clusters. Made it very hard for factual corrections to even reach those groups.
It really does make you stop and think about your own online bubble, doesn't it?
For sure. It paints a fairly stark picture of polarization online, but it's not all one way. Platform design can make a difference. Take Reddit's ChangeMyView subreddit.
ChangeMyView. I've heard of that.
They have this neat system with deltas. If someone genuinely changes your mind on something, you award them a delta.
So it's like a visible reward for changing someone's perspective.
Exactly. It incentivizes good faith discussion and makes changing your opinion, a positive outcome. They actually report around a 27% self-declared opinion change rate there.
Okay, that's quite high, actually. So the takeaway seems to be, yes, network effects can amplify bias, but platform design and moderation choices matter a lot.
They can push things one way or the other.
Right. So we've seen how community structure and network dynamics shape things. What about something even more basic, like language?
Oh, the dominance of English online. That's a huge factor. The stats are pretty stark.
Lay 'em on us.
Okay, so 2024 figures. About 58% of all web pages, English. The next big ipt, Mandarin, is only around 7%.
58%, wow. And in academia?
Even more skewed. Major database, Stopus. 87% of indexed journals are in English. Mandarin is just 3%.
87%?
And Wikipedia shows it too. Nearly half the articles, 48%, are English. Mandarin, 1.2%.
So, okay, English dominates. What are the real-world consequences?
Well, our sources point to a few things. On the plus side, it can definitely speed up global collaboration.
Like the big climate reports, IPCC.
Exactly. The latest draft report, AR7. Hundreds of authors, 90 councillors, all working together in English, make simultaneous editing and discussion much easier.
But flip side.
Marginalization. If you're a brilliant researcher but not fluent in English, your work might just get overlooked. Your voice isn't heard as easily in those global conversations.
And it creates knowledge silos too, right?
Definitely. That 2022 UNESCO report finding only 0.6% of African agricultural research in English databases.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
That means vital local knowledge, maybe about drought-resistant crops documented in Swahili or Amharic, just doesn't make it into the mainstream global databases where development agencies might look.
It stays locked away.
Pretty much. And then there's machine translation. It's getting better, but
Still has issues.
especially for less resource languages.
Hmm.
That audit in Peru in 2023 was worrying. Automated medical advice for Quechua speakers.
Led to actual errors.
Incorrect antibiotic dosages because of translation mistakes. Real-world harm.
That's serious. Are there efforts to fix this imbalance?
There are. Projects like Massacane are really interesting. Volunteers building up language data for dozens of African languages.
To improve translation and digital presence.
Exactly. But these kinds of projects need sustained support, sustained funding to really make a dent.
Okay, so language is a huge filter. What about the tools we use to navigate all this information? Search engines, feeds, the algorithms.
Ah, yes, algorithm bias. How the tech itself shapes what we find.
It's almost weird to think back to pre-Google times how we found stuff. But these algorithms aren't neutral, are they?
Far from it. We see things like search ranking bias. Remember the Google image search for CEO?
Oh yeah, it used to be almost all white men, right? Until maybe 2021 or so.
Pretty much. Even though women held a decent chunk of those jobs, Google has worked on it since, but it showed a bias in the initial results.
And it's not just search. Curation on platforms too.
Right. The TikTok example during the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020.
What happened there?
Reports surfaced that posts using the hashtag Black Lives Matter hashtag were being suppressed, at least initially. Apparently, the algorithm flagged the high volume of re-uploads as potential spam.
So, unintentionally silencing activist voices.
It seemed that way until public outcry led them to adjust things. Shows how curation itself can have unintended biases.
And then there's the really thorny area of predictive policing.
Yeah, that's deeply problematic. The PredPol tool used in Plainfield, New Jersey.
They tried to use it to predict crime hotspots.
That was the idea, but analysis showed the predicted hotspots disproportionately overlapped with Black neighborhoods.
So it was just reflecting or even amplifying existing arrest patterns, not predicting future crime neutrally.
That seemed to be the issue. They stopped using it in 2024. It really highlights how algorithmic bias isn't just, an abstract problem.
It reinforces real-world inequalities, shapes how we see communities, crime, reality itself.
Precisely. The good news is there's growing awareness. Efforts like the Partnership on AI's Algorithmic Transparency Standard.
What does that involve?
Pushing for more openness, making companies disclose the data sources, the weighting, how these influential algorithms actually work, especially for things affecting civic life.
Transparency helps.
Yeah.
Okay, this leads to a kind of bigger, maybe more philosophical question. Is all this data, this big data, changing how we even think, creating a new way of knowing?
A new cognitive paradigm. It's a really fascinating idea. Are we moving away from the old hypothesis-driven science model?
Or just finding correlations in massive data sets and then acting on those.
Maybe. Our sources offer some compelling examples. Take particle physics and the Higgs boson.
Right, discovered in 2012.
Finding it wasn't about testing one specific prediction in the old way. It involved sifting through just unbelievable amounts of data from the Large Hadron Collider,
Right.
300 petabytes.
300, I can't even picture that.
And machine learning was key to deciding which tiny fraction, like 0.001%, was even worth keeping to analyze. Scientists increasingly talk about finding signals in the noise.
A different way of framing discovery.
Or public health. Remember BlueDot AI?
The company that flagged the Wuhan cluster early.
Yeah, back in December 2019. A week before the WHO alert. They did it by spotting anomalies in airline data, news reports, animal disease reports.
So less about a specific hypothesis, more about real-time pattern recognition, anomaly detection.
Exactly. That's a big shift in epidemiology, and you see it in agriculture, too.
How so?
Those smart combines, streaming data constantly, soil conditions, yield variations.
Right, gigabytes a day.
Leading to precision agriculture. Instead of fertilizing a whole field the same, they can microdose nitrogen meter by meter based on the data.
A continuous feedback loop. Sensors, data, decisions, action.
That's the idea. It's iterative, adaptive.
But there have to be caveats, right? It can't be foolproof.
Oh, absolutely. The sources stress this. Remember Google flu trends?
Vaguely. They try to predict flu outbreaks using search data.
Yeah, and in 2013, it famously overestimated flu cases quite badly because people's search behavior changed in ways the model didn't account for.
So correlation isn't causation, even with big data.
Or maybe the correlations change. The point is, big data offers amazing power, but it demands new skills, new literacies.
We need to get better at understanding model limitations, auditing for bias.
Exactly. We need to be critical users of these data-driven insights.
Okay, so stepping back from all these different threads, communities, echo chambers, language, algorithms, big data, what's the big picture here?
I think the overarching theme is that technology isn't just a neutral tool for knowledge. It actively reshapes the perspectives, the very lenses through which we build, share, and challenge what we know.
Across all these different areas we've touched on.
Yeah, and crucially, these shifts aren't inevitable. They're not predetermined.
They depend on the choices we make. Design choices, policy choices.
Exactly. How we design platforms, how we govern algorithms, how we invest in bridging language gaps, these things matter immensely.
So it boils down to needing, what do the sources call it, a reflexive awareness.
Yeah, basically being more conscious, more aware of how our digital tools and environments are shaping what we pay attention to.
And therefore, what we end up knowing or thinking we know.
Precisely.
So maybe the final thought for you, listening, is to take a moment. Think about your own online knowledge habits.
The sources you trust, the platforms you frequent.
The algorithmic feeds you scroll through, what biases might be at play, yours and the algorithms.
And maybe ask, what role can you play? How can we all contribute to fostering information spaces that are more reliable, more inclusive, more diverse in this digital age?
Something to reflect on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.